Hey everyone, Salon here from WynnStrength.com. On this video, we're starting the second week of the Darkhorse training program by Alsruhe. If you've been following along, you know that I've started this new program. It's more of a power building strongman style program where we are trying to drive up some conditioning as well as some general overall strength. We've shifted away from the power lifting single rep max focus to more of a general basis of strength where we're doing heavy triples, heavy fives, and as well as heavy singles along the way. But heavy singles are not the main focus of the goal. We're shifting towards a more general baseline of strength with a bit more focus on conditioning than you would with a typical powerlifting style program. So I'll leave the links below for Brian Alsruhe's video as well as the Lift Vault website where you can find the spreadsheets as well as the explanation of the video where he goes through the ins and outs of the program and why you do certain things. Definitely watch that if you want to follow along. This video won't be necessarily explaining the program in that depth, but I will be documenting my experience with the program. So check out the last 4 videos that I've made so far. So right now, we're obviously day 1, week 2, starting things over again. So today we started up with some conditioning. This takes about 10 minutes. We did rows for 30 seconds, 5 air jumps, and 3 pull-ups. It's a nice little way to get the blood flowing. Generally with the warm-ups for this program, it's dependent on what your lifts are for the day. So because today is squats and deadlift day, we are doing a little bit more of a lower body focus with the warm-up. Again, that's very basic generalized warm-up, so we're just rowing and jumping, and then we're just throwing in some pull-ups there to get some upper body work. But nevertheless, really quick warm-up, 10 minutes, just get the blood flowing, get the heart rate elevated, and then we move on to our maximum effort section for the day. Today it was Romanian deadlifts, followed with some box squats with the SS yoke bar, followed with some hanging leg raises, and wrapping up with some kettlebell swings. Really cool. I did read the program correctly and executed it correctly this week, so instead of doing moderately heavy weights for sets of 12, we actually were able to hit some heavy weights for a set of 5, which was awesome. So it was 5 sets across. My heaviest set was 290 for a set of 5. It felt really good. I think we're heading back to that 5, so it didn't feel too based on the conditioning today, so we are able to execute a little bit more strength today. The 5s felt great. I think the conditioning is working. We did superset that with the 225 for Romanian deadlifts for sets of 12. So that 225 for a set of 12 with the Romanian deadlifts was actually the same weight as last week, but we did work on more sets and more reps as well. So we did drive up that tonnage this week, which I think is a good thing. I'm not really wanting to drive up too much weight with the antagonist movement. I really want to focus on that main lift for today, which is the main lift for the max effort work, which is that box squat there. The box squat is starting to feel good again. We raised up the box height a little bit, so I was on 2 35-pound bumper plates, a single 45-pound weight plate, and then some foam pads that I have lying around. This way we kind of just above parallel for the box squat. And one thing I would recommend with the box squat is, generally with the box squat, if you're not doing it as a marker of depth, you want to kind of sit back and relax on the, not relax, but you want to sit down on the box and take out a little bit of tension. That way when you stand back up, you're kind of rocking forward and driving up from that stop, as it were, on the bottom. So it's kind of like a pin squat, but a little bit more, you get a little bit more of a rocking motion out of the bottom of the hole. I like to do a little bit of a wider stance on this. No real reason, just for personal preference. When I did box squats years back, that's how I did it, so it's just familiar for me. So reintroducing the movement, I like to just go with what's familiar. So we do that wide squat, but you can obviously do whichever stance you want. Just make sure your legs don't hit the box. That's really the only prerequisite for that movement there. So I just wouldn't recommend to just touch and go on the box squat. The only reason I would recommend to do that is when you are trying to gauge depth and work on bounce, not bounce, but working out of exploding out of that hole there without while making use of that stretch reflex there. So the box can be a good assistance tool if you're having trouble getting consistent depth. So you can have a marker of when you need to pop up and down. I wouldn't recommend using pins for that, because touching the barbell on something without resting it, you're going to hit one side or the other, so you're going to throw off that balance there. So if you do need something for depth, put a box right where you need to be for the squats, and then ideally work away from needing that, so you're not reliant on having that box there, so that you do work on that muscle memory and that movement pattern work and getting that technical aptitude there. But if you are just beginning, there's a great way to mark depth. That's what I used to do back in the day, to make sure that I was always hitting depth every single time and not cheating any reps. And then we just wrapped up the first giant set with some hanging leg raises and some kettlebell swings. So nothing crazy there, just add abs and conditioning. Really cool. Trying to work up to just more volume with that. I think the one thing I have switched my opinion on has been the inclusion of direct ab movements. I think it is one of the things that has helped a lot, especially when you start getting into a bit more intermediate style training. When you shift away from that beginner style training, I think direct ab movements really come into play and really contribute some extra improvements in the body, because you are strengthening up that weak link in the chain there, especially myself, who ignored direct ab work for the longest time. Now we move on to the volume section of the workout, which is pretty much, we're taking about 75 to 85% of the top set for our max effort work, and then we're trying to bust out some AMRAPs for the first set, and then doing a couple more higher sets for the following sets there. So first set, that meant we did 230 pounds for the safety bar squat on the box squat. 230 pounds, we hit 12 reps, which felt good, probably RPE 9, maybe 9.5. In general, I don't like to train to complete failure, so I like to always leave one or a half a rep in the tank. I don't want to go all the way out, mainly because I don't want to have to try and figure out how to stand up off of the box with 230 pounds when I can't. So always like to leave a little bit in the tank, especially when you're training at home. Safety is kind of paramount here. Always figure out how you can bail out of a lift, especially if you're training at home by yourself. Set up the safety squats, and that's just like a little public service announcement. Just in general, be safe when you're training alone, because you really could die. It's 230 pounds you're playing around with here. Nevertheless, 12 reps, and then our subsequent volume sets for that was sets of 10. Felt great. Generally for this program right now, for the volume work, I'm trying to aim for at least 2 over the prescribed reps that we do for the subsequent volume sets. So if the target is 8, I generally want to hit 10 as a minimum. Today, obviously, target was 10, so I wanted to hit 12 as a minimum. Sometimes we get higher than that, but at the very least, I want to hit 2 above that. And if it is not going well for that day, I'll hit at least 10. So we're doing sets of 10 across. That's generally how I like to approach things at this point in the program, and I think it's helping. I think it's giving me at least something to shoot for, because when you have an AMRAP, it's up in the air. So just hit that mental goal to hit that milestone. And then for the other workouts, the remaining deadlift, hanging leg raise, and kettlebell swings, everything remains the same. So that's kind of why I like to temper the volume, temper the weight for those movements, because instead of we're actually doing sets of 8 for those things. So it's 5 sets of 12 and then 3 sets of 10. So we're doing a lot of volume for that, driving up that tonnage, which is great. But again, I'm trying to temper the workout here, trying to figure out how this program is working. I don't want to be completely gassed, because this program is already pretty brutal. And I do want to be able to make it to the end of the workout here. So that wraps it up for the volume section, and the final movement for the day is a dynamic effort movement, and today's focus is a deadlift with some bands. We did shift over to some heavier band work, so I went from the thinner pink bands to a slightly thicker orange band, and we also increased the weight there, so 275. We just did heavy triples every minute on the minute for 10 minutes. These ones really taxed me. Adding in that extra resistance as well, adding in the extra weight as well as the extra elastic resistance really made these pretty difficult towards the last 5 or so sets there were quite taxing, and that rest period, I'm not going to lie, I did this 10-minute EMOM probably took maybe 11 and a half minutes there, because we did have a little bit of extra time thrown in between each heavy triple there, just because it was so brutal. But that's just me cheating myself out of gains, right? Nevertheless, that wraps up today's workout. Again, this Darkhorse program is really cool. I'm really enjoying it so far. I'm really enjoying the giant sets. The amount of sweat and the amount of fatigue I'm feeling after the workout is great. But the very next day, I'm not feeling that. I'm not feeling that sore. So I think that is a great sign of a good program. They were able to temper out the stress and the recovery there. I think between the two things, I think it is showing some great improvements. I think I am showing some improvements with it. We have had some increases in weight, increase in tonnage over the previous week, especially for day one. I think we're opening off the week strong. I think the program is a good change in tempo, a good change in programming that I needed. So I think it's a good little break from the usual powerlifting style template. Not to say that that is bad or this is good. I just really enjoying this style of program right now, and I think definitely look at that for yourself. So all that being said, a couple of thoughts for the first day of the second week is the importance of conditioning. I think one of the arguments that I can make for myself in general, for myself right now at least, is that my conditioning was very lacking in the previous years of training, because I was focused solely on driving up 1 rep maxes and had that single mindset there of driving up 1 rep max to the exclusion of kind of other goals and other adaptations in the body. So that meant for like a 2-hour workout, I was just really gassing. We were doing really heavy singles and reps under 5. So with that in mind, I think it was kind of lacking. I was kind of leaving my adaptations out there. I wasn't adapting as well as I could have by ignoring conditioning work. Even when the templates that I was using did prescribe conditioning work, if I was running out of time or I didn't have enough days in the week, I would just cut those out completely. I wouldn't do any conditioning at all, because I didn't think it was of any use at all. And that's just, I think, if you're not a professional athlete that has a single pursuit in mind, and you're just a general weekend warrior, you're just trying to get fitter, you're just trying to be as strong as you can possibly, even if you are trying to be the best person you can be, if your profession or your livelihood doesn't rely on you driving up a single heavy squat, you really shouldn't. I would make the argument that you shouldn't be focusing on a single pursuit of strength, because you are leaving a lot of gains in general strength that you can apply to the rest of your life. So, for example, like hiking with the family, things like that, I would be relatively out of breath for something as simple as like climbing a flight of stairs, and I don't think the gains in squat would really offset the ability for me to live a happy and healthy life outside of the gym. So I think you need to balance that, especially if you're not making a living out of this, and it is just a hobby. And let's be honest here, if you're not making any money out of this, it is purely a hobby. A pursuit of strength is great for your mindset, great for your life, but I think we can temper that out by having a bit more of a well-rounded focus on health and livelihood. Because if it's hard for you to climb up a flight of stairs, then I think you should address what's happening. Because just because you could squat 400 pounds, but it takes you a minute to climb a flight of stairs, that wasn't that bad, but just an exaggeration. It's something to just reassess with your training there, because you shouldn't be leaving one out for the other. It really should just be a cohesive unit, a more holistic approach to how you look at developing strength and improving your health. Because strength and health, yes, they're tied together, but you can divert and focus on one to the expense of the other, especially if you're single-mindedly focused on something. But with that being said, I'm not saying to switch it and go start running marathons. That's not my point. But if that's what you want to do, go do it. But you're probably not watching this video about strength building, because that's where the two opposite ends of the spectrum kind of come in there. But with that being said, I would say definitely increase your amounts of conditioning you expose yourself to over the course of your training. Definitely look at, even if it's something like reducing rest periods is something that you can do. Introducing even just a superset. So when you do a squat, do push-ups. Squat, do some even barbell curls, do something so your rest periods are not purely just sitting there for 5 minutes waiting for the next set to start. And I think even if you are looking to improve that 1 rep max strength during the off season, that is a great time to do some different training, do some different styles of training, increase that conditioning, because what I've noticed is as my conditioning has improved, the workouts that would take longer, A, are becoming shorter, but B, it's easy to get to the end of that workout while still pushing out relatively heavy weights. Now, I think my strength has probably decreased in the previous months, but I don't think that's purely a result of me focusing on conditioning. I think that's just me not purely focusing on developing 1 rep max strength. But I think even if I didn't have that goal, this change in the pursuit of single rep max strength to a more general baseline level of strength, I think I could argue that my ability to adapt to that training would be a lot easier now than it was in the past. Because I am able to last through those workouts a little longer than I was before, and the work capacity is there, because if you can't, it comes down to work capacity as well as your ability to your ability to work for a certain amount of time. If I can only ever push out a heavy single, how do I expect to push out that heavy single again in 10 minutes if I'm gassed after that first one? So it's kind of a balance there. I think definitely throw in a little bit of conditioning, even if it's as little as possible. Do something along those lines to help drive up that work capacity, drive up that GPP, because it will, I would argue it does help drive up the strength as well. They kind of go hand in hand, but still focus on driving those strength numbers up. With all that being said, please stick around for the series. I will be documenting my journey along the Darkhorse program, as well as throwing my 2 cents in afterwards to see if that helps you guys, because really this is documenting my journey, but I also want to help some people out there that might hear something and be like, oh, okay, I could change that in my training and save some of the mistakes that I made from doing yourself. So I'll leave a link for the playlist here. I think I'll put a link to the playlist here, which documents a Darkhorse training vlog, as well as some tips there. This has been Selwyn from WynnStrength, and remember, a better life through strength.